Welcome to a new episode of The Week That Was. We have filtered for you a lot of news which unfolded during the week, starting with a full-time chairman for the CBEC. With Mr. Kaushal Srivastav retiring, the post of CBEC chairman fell vacant on July 1st, 2015. The senior-most member, Mr. Najib Shah, should have taken over as the next chairman, but procedural delays by the Cabinet Committee on Appointments (ACC) led to additional charge scenario for almost 5 months. Anyway, scorching rumors, the ACC has finally appointed him as the CBEC full-fledged chairman. And going by his reputation of being a decisive and firm decision maker, he has resolved a long pending issue of utilization of CENVAT credit of education cess, but only part relief has been granted. The trade and industry wants the board to clarify what should be done with the credit balance of education cess paid on inputs or input services as on March 1st, 2015 or June 1st, 2015. How can this credit be used? Let's hope Mr. Shah takes a quick decision to improve the ease of doing business, which happens to be one of the key mission projects of the Prime Minister and the Finance Minister. Let's now go to Richa for some news on ease of doing business.
Our Income Tax Act is undoubtedly a bulky piece of legislation, and too many of its provisions amended and re-amended tend to generate avoidable litigation because of different interpretations. To study and identify such provisions which are impacting the ease of doing business and also to bring an element of predictability in the tax regime, the Ministry of Finance has set up a committee of experts headed by former ITAT President and Delhi High Court Judge Justice R.V. Ishwar. There are several other members who are going to be part of various subgroups to be formed by the chairman. The committee may give its recommendation in batches. The first batch, containing as many recommendations as possible, shall be submitted by 31st January 2016. But the two limitations which are going to restrict the working space of the committee are: no recommendation should substantially reduce the tax base and impact the revenue collections. Let's go to Asha for PM's pet project, Ease of Doing Business.
If one is looking for a report card or results to test the performance of the government, the World Bank has ranked India higher than last year on the ease of doing business. For 2016, India has been ranked 130th on a list of 189 countries as against being ranked 134th last year, which is the steepest rise not seen by any country for a long time. Actually, India had been ranked 142nd for 2015, but the World Bank made a mid-year revision by moving India to the 134th position. Otherwise, India's performance would have been rated unambiguously better. Does this mean the Indian government's regulatory reforms are working? Let's now go to Richa for the RBI's latest directive on foreign law firms.
The Supreme Court widened its interim orders dated 4th July 2012 and 14 September 2015, passed in the case of the Bar Council of India versus A.K. Balaji and others, had directed RBI not to grant any permission to any foreign law firm on or after the date of the interim order for opening of liaison office in India. Hence, no foreign law firm shall be permitted to open any LO in India till further orders in this regard. However, foreign law firms which have been granted permission prior to the date of interim order for opening LISO in India may be allowed to continue provided such permission is still in force. No fresh renewal of permission shall be granted by RBI or AD banks respectively till the policy is reviewed based on final disposal of the matter by the Supreme Court. Over to Asha for an interesting legal news.
Can you scan any book and make it available online without infringing the publisher's or the author's copyright? Probably not. But there sure are some exceptions. Authors put their heart and soul into writing a book, and along comes a powerful American conglomerate, Google, to scan it and make parts of the book available for its online viewers without seeking any permission for the right to do so. For 10 years, Google fought a legal battle for fair use against authors and publishers for the right to digitize the written word for its online viewers as part of a book search and marketing program. And now Google has won. In December 2004, Google tied with various university and public libraries to digitize millions of books and make this content available as snippets through its Google Books service. It was advantageous for these institutions too, as it enabled them to upgrade their own library system by obtaining from Google a digital copy of all the works scanned. Even the Indian University of Mysore is a library partner with Google. However, these partnerships triggered a huge controversy as publishers and author associations challenged Google's plans to digitize not just the books in the public domain but also the titles under copyright without adequately compensating authors and publishers. So Google battled on two fronts, facing a class action suit against the Authors Guild and a civil lawsuit by 5 large publishers and the Association of American Publishers. Meanwhile, Google continued to scan shelves of library books and invite authors and publishers to include their books under its book search service. After 2 years, in October 2008, Google agreed to compensate authors and publishers in exchange for the right to make millions of books and magazines available online to the public. Google maintained that it was fair use and it had not infringed any copyright laws. So what is fair use? Fair use allows people to use excerpts from books without obtaining an explicit permission from the author. Courts may allow quoted matter to be used as raw material and transformed for the creation of new information, insights, or understanding, as this contributes to the enrichment of society. Google finally reached a settlement with publishers which involved revenue sharing, with the onus of processing the payment being with Google. Even in its case against the Authors Guild, the US District Judge ruled in favor of Google by holding that Google Books was legal as it had not violated any copyright laws and it was fair use. The authors appealed. A 3-judge bench of the Federal Circuit Court again ruled in favor of Google. In a landmark ruling, the judges held that copyright does not confer a divine right on authors for absolute ownership of their creation. Giving authors absolute control over all copying from their works could, in some circumstances, tend to limit rather than expand public knowledge. Fair use, on the other hand, would provide an overall benefit to society and help both authors and readers. The judges considered that the degree to which the use transforms the original work should principally guide fair use rulings. Fair use must employ the quoted matter in a different manner or for a different purpose from the original. A quotation of copyrighted material that merely repackages or republishes the original is unlikely to pass the test. The verdict is clear. Google Books, which has already scanned and indexed more than 30 million books in its database, is legal. This shall certainly help books to be preserved for future generations. Maybe it is time for India too to assess its archaic copyright laws and make information free. Let's move to Richa for some news on eSahyog, making enquiries easier for taxpayers.
The Department of Revenue has launched the eSahyog pilot project, which is a brave move to conduct an online inquiry with the taxpayer, without the assessee actually having to physically appear before the tax authorities. Intended to reduce the compliance cost, especially for smaller taxpayers, the project will use text messages and emails to resolve mismatches in the taxpayer's income tax returns, which have not been selected for scrutiny. The taxpayers are expected to simply visit the online e-portal to view mismatch-related information and submit an online response on the issue, which shall be processed as per the automated closure rules. This move shows the department's commitment to work in a simpler e-environment. Let's go to Asha for news on PAN card drive.
We have heard of health camps, but public service PAN camps? Well, the Department of Revenue, keen to live up to its commitment of increasing the tax base, has taken the first step in this direction to provide PAN cards. The department held special PAN camps in 43 remote semi-urban and rural locations across India over 2 days to facilitate obtaining of PAN cards by the residents. More such camps shall be held through the year, which are also intended to ease the burden of compliance for persons in remote areas. The CBDT surely wants to make compliance easier for the assessees. As per a Johannesburg-based research entity, the New World Wealth, which tracks global wealth creators, India occupies the 10th position among 20 wealthiest countries in terms of private wealth held by individuals. As per the latest report, the value of total wealth is about $3,500 billion in 2015. India also makes it to the top 5 countries on per capita wealth growth between the years 2000 to 2015. It grew from $900 in the year 2000 to $2,800 in 2015. A Hanuman jump of 211%. During the same period, Indonesia registered a growth of 362%, China at 341%, Russia at 253%, and Australia at 248%. The most popular tax haven, Switzerland topped the table with per capita wealth of $285,000 in 2015. Let's go to Richa for tax SOPs on food processing.
Punjab is an agriculture-dominated state. To attract food processing industries, its Deputy Chief Minister Sukhbir Singh Badal, while addressing India's leading industrialists at a summit at Mohali, announced that the state government would grant tax waiver from VAT, CST and even purchase tax to new industries. To further woo the investors, he gave a commitment that the power would be made available at a concessional rate of Rs 4.99 per unit, without any surcharge for 5 years. The state government plans to set up an integrated food park at Ludhiana, a green tech valley at Phagwara and a repair and overhaul facility in the vicinity of Mohali Airport. Now for some news on pay hike for government councils.
It is a fact that government councils are poorly paid, and it is one of the reasons that leads to their poor showing in court cases. To motivate them, the Modi government has finally granted a substantial hike to their retainership fees. For the Attorney General, the Solicitor General and additional Solicitors General, the hike is about 50%. Although it is about 67% for junior counsels, the raise for senior counsels is only about 50%. However, the legal fees for all the 3 categories has been hiked to Rs 24,000 per appearance from Rs 16,000 in writ cases. For special leave petitions, it is going to be Rs 15,000 upped from Rs 10,000. Let's hope it helps the councils to better their performance, particularly in the revenue cases. Over to Richa for news on Review of Companies Act.
While on ease of doing business, this objective is driving the government to take yet another relook at the Companies Act 2013, which has already been through an overhaul of 16 amendments, which Parliament passed earlier this year. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs has formed 6 expert panels with sectorial specialists to work on further amendments, to be guided by removing difficulty and providing greater clarifications because India Inc. still considers this piece of legislation as too harsh. The panel will specifically look at the provisions of registry and incorporation, raising funds, corporate governance, management, accounts and auditing requirements, besides quantum of prescribed penalty, remuneration of directors as well as setting up of the National Company Law Tribunal. The corporate sector has sought relaxation in related party transactions, easing of inter-corporate loans, exemption for private companies from rotation of auditors, besides the clarification that related party also includes holding and subsidiary companies incorporated outside India, and exemption of loans to all subsidiaries even if not wholly owned. The industry also seeks rationalization of the provision for imprisonment, which is up to 10 years for serious frauds, and the introduction of distinction between willful offences and administrative defaults. Let's go to Asha for RBI's take on remittances.
The RBI allows resident Indians to send money overseas towards kids' education, maintenance of relatives, or even gifts under the liberalized remittance scheme. However, a huge 4 times increase in the quantum of these outward remittances by resident Indians has now come under the RBI scanner. A tax evasion angle is being suspected. Possibly Indians in the US using the LRS for resident individuals in India may be trying to dodge US tax authorities, especially after the US government passed the FATCA or the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act to unearth the black money of US residents overseas. It is usual for outward remittances by resident Indians to increase around July every year, which coincides with the new academic sessions overseas and goes towards funding kids' education and expenses. But this year, the remittances have been uncharacteristically high, having increased from $90 million last year to $380 million in 2015. Earlier this year, the ceiling for foreign remittances by resident Indians was doubled from $125,000 a year to $250,000 a year. But RBI is now making inquiries from authorized dealers and collecting remittance data on a monthly basis to better understand the dynamics of outward remittances by resident Indians. On this note, we conclude this episode of The Week That Was. Please do write us your comments, counsel, criticism, and even news at editor@tiol.in. You may subscribe to TIOL Tube to remain updated on our new posts. Have a cheerful weekend ahead.